Hi everyone and welcome to a new video on the CBI channel. In this tutorial series we're creating a full stack web application with Python Django in the backend and React.js in the frontend. And at the end of the tutorial you will know how to build this, a web application with a cool interactive navigation menu, the options to display data in different forms on your application, and also the possibility to create different kinds of records, but also to edit them and to delete them. Now, this is not the first video in this series. We've already done two before, in which we've completed the setup of our Python Django backend and the React.js frontend. In this video, we're going to continue and we're going to be doing some initial work on our React.js frontend, where we will be creating different pages and also enable page navigation inside of our app. And in the end, that will leave us at this point right here, where we're able to access different pages by changing the URL on the top of the screen. And in videos to come, we will of course make sure that we have a nice looking navigation menu so that it's very intuitive for the user to navigate from place to place. Now, to enable page navigation, we will be following 5 main steps. We're going to start by installing React Router, which is a package that's going to help us with enabling page navigation inside of our frontend. Then we're going to wrap our entire project around that React Router package so that we can actually use all of the functionality of React Router across our entire application. Next, we will be creating some new pages inside of our frontend so that for each of the pages we want to show in our application, we have a separate file inside of our frontend project. Then we're going to list all of our pages in our app.jsx file, and we will make sure that the correct page is being shown in the browser based on the URL of the user. And then as a final step, we're going to be doing some testing to make sure that everything works the way that we expect. So the first thing that we need to do is install something called React Router. And React Router is going to help us to navigate to different pages. Now you can use React Router in 2 different ways. The first one is use it as a framework, which is handled right here. And that would offer the same functionality as what we did with Vite in the previous video. The second option, and the option that we're going to be taking, is to use it as a library, so to purely use it for routing inside of your application. And that's the option that we're going to be picking. So we're going to go to library and then installation. And in here, you can see the steps for using it as a library. Now, the first step is actually creating your app using Vite, and we've already completed that previously. So all we need to do is install React Router using npm install React Router. So we're going to be copying over this code right here, and then we can install it inside of our project. So we're now back inside of our code, and we have the backend and the frontend folder from the previous videos. Now, to install this package inside of our frontend, we need to open a new terminal. And then we're going to be cding into our frontend folder because we want to install the package in there. And then once we are in the frontend folder, we can simply paste in the command of npm i react router, and that will add it to the frontend project. And just like that, the first step in this video is complete. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we need to make some change inside of our project to make sure that we can use all of the functionalities from React Router in our frontend. And we can also see that inside of the documentation, because there it shows exactly what we need to change. You can see that it imports a browser router from React Router, and then it wraps the complete app around the browser router. So we're going to be doing the exact same thing as what we see right here. So to do the same thing as we saw in the documentation inside of our own project, we're going to go into the front-end folder and we're going to go to source, because that's where all the content lives. And then we're going to go to the main.jsx file, because inside of this file, you can see that it has the similar structure as in the documentation. And you can see that the actual component that it renders is app, which comes from our app.jsx file, which means that our complete application is coming together in this file, which makes it a very good place to wrap it around the browser router from React Router. So the first thing that we need to do is make an import. Because if we go back here, you can see that we need to import browser router from React Router. So I'm just going to copy over that line, and then we just place that inside of our file right here. Now we want to wrap our total app around the browser router. So what we can do is open a new block and here say browser router. And then we just place the app inside of the browser router like this. And then we can save it. And just like that, our entire app is wrapped with the browser router, meaning that we can now use the functionality from React Router across our front-end application. And that completes the second step of this tutorial, where we make sure that we wrap our entire project around the routing package. Now, the first step is actually creating some pages inside of our front-end. So let's first see what we currently have when we start our front-end server. And we can do that by doing npm run dev. And that will start our server on the localhost 5173. Now, if we go right there, you can see that we have Vite plus React and we have a basic counter. And actually, all of that content that we just saw is written in the app.jsx file. So in here, we actually see HTML code, which is being returned as app. Now, what we want to achieve is we want to have multiple different pages and let them all come together inside of this app.jsx file. And the first step to actually realize that is making sure that we have those different pages. So inside of our source folder right here, I'm going to be creating a new folder and I'm going to be calling that components. And inside of this components folder, we're going to create the different files that we want to display in our front end. Now, for a start, I want to first have a home page. So let's call that home.jsx. And in there, we just want to show a very basic message so that we know that we are on the home page. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be on the top doing an import of React from React. And then we're going to create a constant called home. And then we do some round brackets and then an arrow function. And in there we are able to return something. And the only thing that we're going to return at the moment is a simple div tag. And that div tag is going to say this is the homepage. So now we have a constant which returns a div, which simply has the text of this is a homepage. But to make sure that we can use this in other places, we also need to export it. So we can say export default, and then we can say that we want to export home. For now, this is all that I want to show right here, but we're also going to be creating some other pages. Because of course, in this series, we also want to build functionality for creating, reading, updating, and deleting records. So what I'm going to be doing is copying over this home.jsx file. And we're also going to create a separate page for create.jsx. And that's the page where later on we will create functionality for actually creating records. And then we can rename this constant to create and also make sure that we can export the create. And then we can say this is the create page. Now we also want to edit and delete records. So I'm going to copy and paste this and make sure that we have an edit.jsx file. And then we can again say that this is a constant called edit and that this is the edit page. And the last step here is going to be creating the page for delete called delete.jsx. And in there we say that we want to call this delete and say that this is the delete page. And just like that, we have different pages inside of our front end. Now, what we want to do is we want to make sure that all of these components come together in one place and that based on the URL in our front end, we get the correct page on our actual screen in the browser. And the place where we can do that is in the app.jsx file. So currently this app.jsx file has a counter and all different kinds of images, but that's not going to be so relevant for us. So we're going to be deleting the total content in the return statement so that there's nothing there. And also I'm going to be deleting these imports of React logo and Vite logo because we don't really need those at the moment. And also this constant of the counter can go. Now in our application, the app.jsx file is actually going to be a collection of the different pages that we have created in our components folder. And then based on the URL, we want to show a certain page. So if we are on the home URL, I would like to see the content of this is the home page. But if we are on the create URL, I want to have this is the create page visible on our screen. Now to do that, we can make sure that we use some functionality from React Router to declare which URLs we will actually have inside of our frontend. So what we will do on the top here is start with an import. We're going to be importing something called routes and also route, and that is going to be from React Router. Now these two blocks will actually enable us to define what the URLs in our frontend are and also what component needs to be shown for each URL. Now to define these different URLs, we start by declaring a main block, which is going to be routes. Now this is just one overarching block that is going to contain all of the URLs in our frontend. And we can declare each individual URL by defining a route. Now for each route, we need to provide some information. Now the first piece of information that it needs is the actual path that we want to give a certain route. So for example, if we want to create a URL for our homepage on the front end, we can simply say that the path is equal to some parentheses, which means just the base URL. And then next to that, we can define what we want to put on the screen when we arrive at the base URL of our application. And we do that in the second parameter that we're going to be adding, and that is called element. Now in here we need to define what we want to see. And what we want to see in this case, when we are going to the base URL of our front-end project, is the homepage. Because usually when you get to your app, you want to see the homepage first. So actually what we want to do is we want to display this piece of code when we arrive at the base URL. Now to do that, we can go to our app.jsx file, and in there we can first import the home component. So we say import, and then we're going to do home from components.home. And then inside of this element, we can state that whenever we are in the base URL, we want to show the home component. And let's save that. And now every time when we arrive at the base URL, it will show the element of home, and home, as defined here, will provide the text of this is the homepage. And that is the way that everything is connected to each other, and that you can actually display different pieces of information in your front end by declaring different routes. Now we also have pages for create, edit, and delete. So if we go to our app.jsx file, I can copy over this route, and I can say right here that whenever we are on the /create URL, that we then want to see create. So then we just import create from the components /create file. And then we say whenever we are on /create, we want to see the element of create. Now let's first save this and see how this works in our front end. So we are now in our front end, and you can indeed see if we are just on the base URL, so no extension after the link, that we will encounter the text of this is the homepage. And that is of course what's described in the home.jsx file. Now of course, if we would now go to /create, the component of home will no longer be shown, but it actually shows this is the create page, because we've defined in our app.jsx file that every time we arrive at the /create, we want to display the element of create, which is going to take it from here. Now the last thing that we also still need is the path for edit and for delete. Now when you edit or delete a record, you actually want to do that for a specific piece of data, because you want to edit a certain record in a certain model, and you also want to delete a specific record. And that means that we need to add a parameter to that URL, because if we want to delete a specific record, we need to know what the ID or the identifier of that record is going to be. So to make sure that we can also have routes with different parameters inside of it, we can copy over again this same route. Let's do it first for edit. And we can change the URL from /create to edit, and then we do another slash, and in there we can state that we expect a parameter of ID by doing a colon and then specify ID. And then we want to see the element of edit, so we can say import edit from component /edit, and then we can mention that whenever we are arriving at edit and we receive a certain parameter, then we want to show the edit page. Now the same actually goes for the delete page. So if we just copy over this route, we can say that we want to do delete and also receive a parameter here of the ID. And then we can import the delete page from component /delete and make sure that we see the delete component whenever we arrive at /delete/ID. Now how this is going to work in future videos is that we're going to provide the ID of a certain record in the URL. And based on that ID in the URL, we will be able to fetch the data of that specific record, but we'll also be able to send that ID to our backend to let it know that it needs to edit a specific record or delete a specific record. So this is going to help a lot with the communication between the front end and the backend. Now, what would that look like in our front end? Well, if we would simply go to /edit, we won't actually see anything. And the reason for that is that we've just specified that it expects a parameter. So if we would do /edit and do /1, and in this case then 1 is our parameter, we can again go here, and now we do see the edit page because the edit page recognized that we need a parameter on the end. Same goes for delete. If we would now go to /delete, it wouldn't show us anything, but if we go to delete /2, it will know that we are on the right delete page. And that is actually all for this video. In this video, I showed you how you can enable page navigation in your React.js frontend using React Router. In the next video, we're really going to make a big step because we're going to be creating a nice looking navigation menu that I also showed you at the start of this video. And that's going to make everything look a lot better than it does right now. I want to thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.